Perfect.
All right, Liberty Expert Nation. I am here with Alex Joehl. Now, Alex was a candidate in our last election for the federal party, right?
That's correct.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. And recently had a debate. It's an age-old debate, and I wanted to talk to him about this because this comes up over and over again. It came up when I began as leader of the party, and it's the idea that we ought to change the name of the Libertarian Party to something else, something that people recognize. Because we do quite often when we go to doorsteps and or door knocking, we say, hey, we're with the Libertarian Party. Oh, I'm not a liberal. Sorry, I'm conservative. And it gets frustrating. So I can understand where it comes from. But I want to talk to Alex about this. He was in the debate. He took the side that, no, we shouldn't change the name. And so I wanted to chat with him about why this keeps coming up and about his points against it. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you, Tim.
Yeah, so let's just start with your Liberty story a little bit. Like, how did you come to be saved?
How was I woke before woke was taken from us?
Yeah.
No, I was in college and I was learning about classical liberalism and the historical aspect, and I think that's me. Never knew that was me, and tried to find a political party where I could feel like I belonged. And I used to be a conservative, like a lot of people within the Liberty community, but I felt like they weren't speaking to me anymore. And so I looked for a party that had my views, and that was the Libertarian Party of Canada and the BC Libertarian Party, which just so happened a lot of the same people, they overlapped. So I got in touch with Paul Geddes, who's still the treasurer of our BC Libertarian Party. And he got me set on the right track, and I started the path to becoming a candidate in a federal election with the Libertarian Party of Canada.
Nice. Okay, and so what's your experience been of a candidate as going out there and trying to connect people with this message?
Yeah, so the point that you touched on, you run into a lot of, oh, you mean liberal? Like, no. My message during the debate, and I'm sure we'll get more into it later, but my message was that even if people don't know what a libertarian is, that doesn't mean that it's not an opportunity for us. So I look at every time that someone says, I ask them, what's a libertarian? I explain, don't hurt people, don't take their stuff. I say, we believe somebody should have a better idea of how to live their life than a politician 1,000 miles away. So my experience has been exactly what you suggested. There was a lot of pushback only in that there's the ignorance of libertarianism. And I feel that that's something that we definitely need to work on as both as a party, but also as a liberty movement, because there are plenty of liberty-minded people not in libertarian named parties.
Right. Yeah. And, I guess it speaks kind of to the whole idea of what's the best strategy going forward, right? And if you think the best strategy is getting votes, then what you might do is adopt a name that can mean multiple things to multiple people and attract those votes. Something as vague and banal as the People's Party, right?
Yeah.
But while the People's Party in the U.S. is a far left party, and up here in Canada, it's something very different. Right. Again, that name, People's Party, is a good strategy if what you're trying to do is just collect votes. And so I can appreciate that if you think that collecting votes and forming government is the best way forward, then by all means figure out a name that is going to collect those votes for you, right? But I think that is a very naive and poor strategy. I've never seen that before. And here's what I said. So you guys had this debate last week, and the moderator, Keith McIntyre, reached out to me and said, hey, I think the panel would love to have a question from you. Would you mind submitting something? And here's what I said, and I submitted a bit more than a question. I submitted a question and then a bit of I guess
A post-amble.
yes, a post-amble. Let's go with that. I was going to say a rant, but that didn't sound quite right. Post-amble sounds about right. Because it's not really a rant. It's just, I'm trying to approach this rationally here. So here's my question. Is there any historical evidence that government can legislate liberty or restrain itself in the absence of a libertarian population that understands and demands liberty? If the answer is yes, then perhaps gathering votes and forming government is the best strategy. But if you agree with me that the answer is no, then the best strategy is making more libertarians and focusing on those that are most receptive to our message. The liberty brand is growing. The libertarian brand is growing, I should say. It's a word that means something. It's a word that Murray Rothbard, Walter Block, Ron Paul, and countless other activists have helped popularize and educate people on, and the world's a better place because of this. If you agree with me that making more libertarians is the most strategic goal, then I implore you to stick with a name that means something. I know it's tempting to engage in the politics of expediency and adopt a vague name that can mean multiple things to multiple people and might make it easier in the short term to gain supporters. But our battle is slow and steady and rooted in unmoving principle. And that's why it will eventually win if we stay the course. The number of libertarians in this world is growing, not shrinking. And it would be a shame to miss out on the opportunity to be associated with such an exciting brand. And just as an aside, if you talk to Walter Block, when he first was introduced to this philosophy, he asked Murray Rothbard, how many libertarians do you think there are in the world? And Murray started counting on his fingers and came up with like 22 or something like that.
Yeah.
And that number is now millions and millions.
Yes.
The US Libertarian Party is about to take off as the Mises Caucus takes control of the party with a hardcore principled message that's going to appeal to populists and further popularize our brand. We are the original populists. We're like you said, Alex, we're the original wokesters. We're the original red pill people. But we're smart populists, not populists that advocate for collectivism and violate principles of liberty. This is the greatest opportunity in our lifetime to get our message out to people who are disenfranchised by destructive government forces during the pandemic and give them a liberty education. Doing what is right is never easy or expedient, but the good news is that our ideas are picking up steam because of our steadfast adherence to principle, signified by one word, libertarian. I hope that all of those that have sacrificed so much and fought so hard for this moment in time can count on your continued support. So that was my message. And again, I think it comes down to those two strategies. Is your goal to change culture and thereby change government, or is your goal to collect votes and thereby change government? Well, right. I think the historical evidence and just the logical, the logic of it goes to the fact that government, you can't legislate liberty unless you have that population of people that embrace it. But tell me, how did the debate go, and what do you think the results were?
So we'll just speak to your question first. I mean, when I first heard the question, it was exactly addressing issues that I know you've brought up before with what is our ultimate goal with being a political party under the Libertarian name. And I feel that, yeah, it definitely is trying to get a grassroots culture shift, more so than it is getting someone elected. Because if getting someone elected was the only goal, then absolutely we would water down our message or become a single issue party, and we would just do everything in that realm. But the reality is we want to continue to be that party for so many people that when they feel that there's nobody else that is going to stand up for the philosophy of liberty, that we will still be there for them. And once you start to take the name away from us, we just become another color. The blue, orange, red, greens that are already out there, we're just going to become yellows. So
yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we were against these lockdowns when the party formed 45 years ago. like you can count on it just by looking at our principles. We are a
Right.
party based on principle. They're immutable principles that you protect the individual, that you don't initiate violence, that you don't violate property, and so you can derive, all like we're constrained to those principles. And I know many people would like to change those principles, make them a little bit more loosey goosey and vague,
Yeah.
but again, that leads to one direction. I've said this again and again, and I love a lot of I see people that are out there, like a lot of the populists in the People's Party, the candidates running there as definitely our allies. But these people are reflecting a popular sentiment, right? They're reflecting the fact that people are disenfranchised. And we are promoting a philosophy, and we're breaking trail, right? There's more libertarians in the world because of people promoting libertarianism, not because of people reflecting what's going on in culture right now, of people getting tired of government BS and wanting to install their own
Right.
government BS. And so, I've said this. This is one of my critiques of Max Bernier's strategy, and maybe I'm a little butthurt because he didn't take my offer to actually take my spot and be Canada's Ron Paul. He could have used his platform and his stature to really push a hardcore liberty message out there and make far more libertarians than I can make because of his stature and platform. But he chose to go a different route, which is collect votes. And I think again, it's a naive strategy. Let's think about the logical consequences of where he's going to end up. Okay, if he has success, that means he's going to maybe have a shot at forming government, and to do that, he's going to have to reflect culture. And what is culture out there in Canada? Well,
Yeah.
it's basically what Justin Trudeau and Aaron O'Toole are promoting, right? People are generally concerned about climate change. They're generally concerned about all the things that the mainstream media tells them to be concerned about:
Right.
racism, inequality, all these leftist things. His party's going to have to drift further and further left towards the center if he wants to have a shot at forming government. And if you think that forming government is important and that's your strategy, well, then you would have to adopt those policies. And we see this happening in the Conservative Party right now. This is why the Conservative Party is so far left wing. And if you remember, the Conservative Party started out largely because with Reform Party roots, right? I mean,
Yeah.
these people were very similar in many ways to the People's Party. It was a populist party, started picking up steam. They realized they were going to have to form larger and larger coalitions with other conservatives to actually have a shot at getting rid of the liberals and forming a conservative government, in quotes. And so they started bending their principles and merging and doing different things to make sure they got in power to save Canada from the evil left. It's an anti-left philosophy. There is no coherent principles to conservatism other than whatever the left is for, we're against. And so that's what they're focused on: get rid of the left, form government, and then everything will be great. And we can't risk having principle this election. I hear this over and over again from conservatives because this is the most important election in our lifetime, and we can't
It
afford the
always
left to
is.
win. So they violate their principles. They do what it takes to get into government, and you end up with a completely impotent conservative government where government continues to grow at maybe a slower pace, but I'm not even sure of that anymore. I mean, Christ, Aaron O'Toole wanted to enact the emergency, whatever the War Measures Act is called now, the Emergency Act that allows government to suspend civil liberties and expropriate property and do all sorts of things. Well, he was advocating for that over a year ago, and Jagmeet Singh is only just starting to advocate for it now. So now it's almost like conservatives are driving faster than progressives down that status road. But anyways, yeah. So sorry that I get passionate about this because it just drives me nuts to see all these people with all this potential to actually get something done, to actually, here's what I feel like, Alex. I feel like we're playing the actual game. Like, people often say, libertarians, you have no shot at winning. Like, just give up. You're never going to form government. Well, no. We're playing a completely different game than you. We're playing the actual game. This game is hockey, and you are over there playing soccer in the corner, cheering, in the corner of the ice rink, cheering every time you score a goal. Meanwhile, we're getting clobbered out here on the ice. We could use a little bit of freaking backup from you guys. Like, get up here, promote a hardcore message, advance libertarianism. That's the only option we have. That's the only strategy that can work. Meanwhile, you guys are over there collecting votes for God knows what. What are you going to do with all those votes? You're going to form government? Then what? Anyways, Alex, you comment on what I've said. I gotta relax here and have a little sip of coffee.
No, I love your passion. It's honestly, it's one of the things that's kept me motivated through getting beaten up in the corners throughout all these elections. I have run federally, I've run provincially, I've run for mayor of the township of Langley, I've run in the school board by-election, and none of those results were particularly flattering. But I keep going back, and people say, "Oh, I appreciate your dedication and your commitment." And I never actually full out hear, "Don't bother, you're not going to win." But that's more to my character. Now, when we talk about as a Libertarian Party, they say, "Oh, well, you guys aren't going to win." Why? Maybe then I hear it more about our party, about like, why even bother? You guys, I've heard it from people close to me. Why don't you just join a major party where you have a chance of winning and change it from the inside?
Right.
I'm like, oh, I don't think you understand how hard that is either.
Yeah. And I always say, well, if the importance is joining a party that's going to win, why don't you just vote for the party you think is going to win every time? I mean, I don't get it. Like, why vote against the Liberals if you think they're going to win? Why not just vote with them and try to change the Liberals from the inside or something like that? And join the EDs. Why not just form one giant party and try to change it from within? Yeah.
Oh, you mean like it's a single party? How could that go wrong, right?
Exactly.
No, absolutely. No, to your all the points you made. It's really too bad when people think that getting votes is the only object, because then you start to get caught up with trying to gauge success by how election day results go. And unfortunately, I had a very poor showing this last provincial election that we ran, that snap election John Horgan called. But a lot of my party members had very positive results, in that they, highest vote totals ever, or very good percentages within our electorate. And you can deem that as a success, or you can deem mine as a failure. But the reality is that I was still an option for people on a ballot who, when they got to the ballot box, they knew what a libertarian was. They didn't have to do an over amount of homework. They knew libertarian is libertarian 7 days a week. And that, I think, just speaks to our name, that I don't have to go and explain it to a lot of people. Now, do I have to explain it to the majority of people? Yes, that's not a negative. That's an opportunity. And there will always be some that hear the word libertarian and that turns them off right away. Well, that's going to turn those people off regardless of what our name is.
Right.
If they get wind of, during the debate, it came up like, oh, we'll just have them check our Wikipedia page, and then it'll say that we're a classic liberal party. Well, those people are still not going to vote for us.
Right.
That's what our name is. So I would rather still have that branding that, like you said, that a lot of people have got blood, sweat, and tears to create.
And like you said, like, if the majority of people don't know what a libertarian is, if they don't understand the philosophy of liberty, what hope in hell do you have of limiting government if you actually form government? How in the hell are you going to repeal all these institutions, deal with the negative propaganda that the media is immediately going to throw at you, deal with the bureaucratic inertia and entrenched bureaucracies without a public that demands liberty? It's not going to happen. So the fact that a majority of people don't, if it's true that a majority of people don't understand what libertarian is, well, that tells us what work we have to do, and any other work other than making more libertarians and spreading the gospel of liberty is just a absolute waste of time, as far as I can see. And I see this too, Alex. When I go to the States, I often speak at libertarian conventions in the US, and I hear the rhetoric coming out of there as, guys, we can actually win if we do X, Y, and Z. And by win, they mean collect votes, right? And they have had some electoral success in some small districts, like for like municipal elections and stuff like that, and for different state things. But like even that municipal election, I think, okay, well, this guy's won, and now how much more liberty do the people in his municipality have? How much is he actually able to do? And what happens when he gets voted out next time? Does everything, do the modest cuts that he make and the modest reforms that he make go away? And I mean, we see this, for example, in New Zealand. Like, there's a fairly classical liberal party there called the ACT, I believe. And I remember, I think 10, 15 years ago, the classical liberal party in New Zealand actually got some stuff done. Like, they actually did what a lot of us were amazed and thought maybe couldn't be done. And they repealed things like, I think they repealed their version of the DMV or something like that, like the Department of Motor Vehicles, and had, I mean, they had all sorts of great reforms. Mind you, all those reforms went away as soon as they lost power, because there wasn't a population that demanded it. In fact, the population eventually voted them out, and now there's a giant socialist in charge there. So how'd that work out for them?
Right.
So all that work put into getting your candidate elected to make some marginal changes that are only going to be repealed the next time the leftist gets elected just seems like an absolute waste of time for me. I mean, we have so much important work to do. But my point there before I got sidetracked was that I see this coming out of the U.S. Libertarian Party, that this pragmatist approach, right? And by pragmatist, I mean like collecting votes and thinking that that's practical. They end up with candidates like Bob Barr and Gary Johnson, former, Gary Johnson and Bill Weld. Here we have two former dignified, esteemed Republican governors that have had some political success, and they're not. There's no more libertarians in the world because of guys like that who are very soft on the hardcore principles of liberty. And so again, it leads to kind of an impotent execution of strategy, as far as I can see. And now what I'm seeing in the US, headed up by people like Tom Woods and Dave Smith and all these hardcore liberty activists, they're joining the party, and they're pointing out, look, the reason liberty is popular to the degree it is right now is because of guys like Ron Paul, who stood up on that stage and had an unwavering, principled message, even though he wasn't going to win votes. Our goal has to be to educate people and convert them to libertarianism. In fact, that's the original stated goal of the US Libertarian Party, which our party is largely modeled on. It started, I think, a year or two after the US Libertarian Party. But David Nolan, his stated goal was, we need to educate the public. That's the strategy. That is the strategy, guys. But anyways, I'm curious to know how you felt the debate went. Were there any arguments you heard from the other side that you weren't expecting, or that sounded pretty good?
I guess my shock was that I was almost convinced by them in the middle of it.
Right.
They were Paul and Bill. They were Paul Matthews, Bill Morris, and they were very convincing. They spoke from the heart and made a lot of convincing points. I would say that one argument I didn't think they would say is that they mentioned you, and they said Tim Moen's better at making more libertarians as a podcaster and as a person within social media than he is as a leader of a political party. And I never thought of that. That may be true or may not be true. But I've always looked at our political campaigns as a soapbox that the media gives us, every 4 years, or when every election cycle, we get a chance to speak with the libertarian banner under our name, and that is an opportunity that we should never pass up. And to have to go on that soapbox and not only have to explain your message, but also have to explain what your party name is, that's twice as much work. So I love that our branding tells exactly who we are to the people that actually are going to be fertile ground, because that was a point I created for myself just on the fly. It was, who is the fertile ground that we're actually trying to find with our message? We shouldn't be wasting our time dragging in as many people under the big umbrella as possible, because that's not going to be helpful. Like you said, best case scenario, we get someone elected. Worst case scenario, it's that all gets overturned as soon as another group gets into power. So no, I don't know if there was anything that really, any one issue that they brought up that really surprised me, other than, yeah, they were very, very convincing. So when the results came in at the end, that actually, you know, a couple people had changed their vote. So in an Oxford style debate, that means the keep the name side won. So that was, I would say I was very happy with that. I think it was 31% wanted to still change it. So, you know, that's the bad news, is there's still 31% of people within our movement that want to change it. And I still have some work to do on those 31%, I guess.
Right. Yeah, and that's a fair point. That's an interesting point, you know, and they may actually be right that, look, I'm having more effect right now for sure with podcasts, social media, blogs, and different things like that. But the only reason the degree to which I'm having success is the degree to which I gained some popularity and some eyeballs on me from running for office, from standing on that political stage. I wouldn't have the popularity, the clout, the ability to influence people had I not engaged in that political, stood on that political stage. So you can't say that isn't effective, that standing on that political stage isn't effective. It's highly effective. And I got a lot of media, especially when I ran in a by-election, a lot of local media. As a politician, I feel like I may have converted more people to liberty than even as a podcaster, but that might not be true. But anyways, the degree to which I'm effective is the degree to which I'm willing to stand wherever the spotlight is and preach the message of liberty. And, you know, we need all hands on deck. And, you know, this gives me a little bit of insight, because it's difficult. One of the difficult things as a party leader and as a party is to keep people motivated, right? Because what happens is people will say, oh man, libertarianism, this makes so much sense. You know, I just recently had Rob Boutillier, or Boutelier, what is his name again? Patriotic Dad. He runs the Buffalo Tribune, very popular kind of populist podcaster and blogger and figure. He just has come out basically as a born-again libertarian, and he joined the party, and he's pumping the tires of libertarianism big time right now. He's excited about it. And I've seen this before, right? We get people, when they see this, it's like, yeah, this makes so much sense. And this is obviously the right answer. And they're like, man, I'm just going to step on that. I'm going to put my name in for political office, and obviously people are going to vote for me once they hear this message. And then you get 1 or 2% of the vote, and it demoralizes you, and you're thinking, man, I really thought we had a chance here of winning. And so, you know, the thing that worries me is this 30% of people that are involved in the party are clinging on to this hope that we're going to be able to win an election, and then that's going to make a difference. And they're not going to see all the good they're doing, even if they don't win an election, even if they don't gather a lot of votes. They're not going to see the good that they can do by getting good at persuading people and connecting them with the principles and the message of liberty, and staying motivated to stay in this game. Man, there's never been a better time to connect people with the message of liberty. There's never been a better time to promote the libertarian brand as right now, when we have these draconian lockdowns and everyone's feeling oppressed and everyone's getting tired of it and everyone's looking for what's the political answer. Like, I feel like everything I've known about the world and politics is out the window. Like, no one's protecting us, no one's protecting our rights. And how can this be? How did we get to this place? Well, libertarians have all the answers to that, and we just have to connect with people. Now's the time to do it. So I really, you know, I guess for people listening to this that might be on the side of, you know, we need to change the name and collect votes. Look, I would just implore you to stay the course and to recognize the good that you are doing by promoting the unflinching, unapologetic principles of liberty and connecting people with it. That's the answer. It's a beautiful philosophy. More people need to know it. And you know, we don't know all the positive unintended consequences that can come from a population of libertarians, of more and more people embracing liberty. Like, I believe that as long as we're doing our job, we may never ever even get elected, right? Like eventually what's going to happen
Maybe.
is all these other parties are going to have to start, you know how libertarians often say, well, we're socially liberal and fiscally conservative. Well, eventually what it's going to be is sometimes the Liberal Party is socially libertarian. Sometimes the Conservative Party is fiscally libertarian. We're libertarian all the time. We're going to keep the pressure on these other parties. Eventually, they're going to have to define themselves by authoritarian or libertarian. They're going to have to say we're libertarian on these policies. And eventually, our libertarian policies are going to be in these mainstream parties. At that point, I don't care if we win an election or not. I've won. That we've succeeded because the culture has put pressure on these parties to adopt libertarian principles and platform items, and we just need to keep that pressure on.
Absolutely. Just the fact that there's more use of our name in mainstream politics than ever before is all, and we've obviously been doing something right.
Right.
But again, it's an uphill battle. We need to acknowledge that no one's getting elected anytime soon. Like you said, we got big name candidates, and maybe not as much here in Canada, but I know in the States, in the US and state legislation, they've had some success. I know they got a guy elected in their state Congress in Wyoming. So obviously they're doing some things well. We can't just photocopy it though, because of course the populace here in Canada is very much different than in the United States. So I think what we need to do is just continue to spread that message so that even though maybe at first somebody might be a little hesitant, a little resistant to hearing like maybe I do know what's best for me and I don't need the government to tell me what to do. But as each successive government comes into power and continues to chip away at your rights and continues to screw things up, whether it's even on purpose or not, because let's face it, there are a lot of well-meaning politicians in government who are doing what they think is their best to help people. But if we've sowed the seeds amongst a populace that there's a libertarian opportunity and that word is on the tip of their tongue, then the next election cycle, they'll be more accepting of our message. They'll think, wow, well, those libertarians were right about that. Maybe I should give them a chance at the ballot box. And unfortunately, that's not even an option for a lot of people. Of course, we haven't run a full slate in the history of our party, and it's probably not going to happen at the next federal election whenever Mr. Trudeau thinks that it's going to be important to have a snap election. But definitely our name is tied to us. I don't care. I mean, People's Party, it was a nice option, and I would love to say that they split the vote on something, but if you look at their actual percentage, they were almost as inconsequential as us in the results, which is sad. I would love to have seen some vote splitting,
Yes, and I mean,
look, that doesn't happen. It's just not
right.
as much as people say it is.
Yeah, and I'd love to see some vote splitting too to punish the Conservatives for their violations of liberty. Right. But vote splitting is only a short-term win. It doesn't mean a long-term win. Eventually the People's Party, if they want to form government, they're going to have to form coalitions with other conservatives. They're going to have to merge with they're going to have to become a mainstream party. And that means adopting status quo cultural norms and policies. And
well, look at Alberta, perfect example. What they did on the right wing, the Wild Rose Party was as close to a libertarian party as we were going to have in provincial politics, and they conceded to join the PCs. And that look at what has that right wing party been doing during the lockdowns? They've conceded.
Exactly.
They've given up everything that they may have possibly sort of stood for. So if you don't at least have the name dragging you back to liberty.
And Alex, that's exactly what they have to do. And this is the thing I have to drive home over and over to people. They have to do that. They have to become the UCP. They have to become the CPC, because if that's your strategy, is to form government, you have to become those things. You have to reflect culture. And these parties have never created more of the ideology that they profess, right? Like the PPC isn't creating more libertarians, the conservative or conservatives. The Conservative Party isn't creating any more conservatives. They're just collecting votes, and by reflecting culture. And so who are the people that are actually changing culture? Because those are the people that are moving the world. Those are the people that are actually controlling the government. Who's controlling the government right now? Is it Trudeau and O'Toole and Jagmeet Singh? No, it's the radical left. It's people that you don't even know about. It's people that are out there promoting this principled radical philosophy unapologetically, and they are controlling our politics in Canada. And if we don't understand that and adopt that strategy ourselves, we're conceding to the left. We're conceding to statism, to big government. This is why, when you have Jagmeet Singh and Elizabeth May on that national debate stage, even the Conservative Party has to have a climate action plan, right? These people are unflinchingly, unapologetically advancing something that was unpopular 10 years ago and is now gaining popularity because of their unflinching, devotion to their philosophy or their cause. They have a cause that they believe in so strongly. Conservatives don't have a cause that they believe in that strongly. I mean, in the States, conservatives often talk about how they're pro-life or something like that. Well, they're never going to repeal abortion. They always talk about the things that they say they're passionate about, but then they cave in the end. And so we need to be unflinchingly principled in our thing. Listen, this is a passionate topic for me, because I always bang my head against the wall. I would love to have, more support. I'd love for our party to have more support and more people getting involved in unflinchingly advancing our message, because we could be far more effective if we just, if we could run a full slate and people could see that name Libertarian on every ballot, that will go a long ways to being, I wonder what that is. And if they don't vote for us, they see it on the ballot, they start doing some Google searches and they see what it's all about. They start seeing, well, who are the libertarian leaders here in Canada? What are they saying? And then they turn on to my podcast or my blog or what I'm saying on the party page. And next thing you know, so if you think my voice is attractive and persuasive and making more libertarians on my podcast, it'll be even more attractive and effective and persuasive. The more popularity our party gets, the more candidates we can run. So I guess that's my appeal to people out there listening to this podcast. Join the party and step up on that stage and run as a candidate. I had no idea it was going to take me down this path. I was very resistant to running it at all. I resisted it for months and months, even though people were asking me to, and I finally did. And, I found that it was a brilliant platform to take a message that I believe in so strongly and I take very seriously, to an audience that was thirsty for it. That's the one thing that amazed me about this. Like on social media, and out there in the podcast, it's very crowded in those spaces, and people push back and they're assholes to you and mean and different things like that. But actually, when you're standing in front of your community at a town hall, you get some very earnest, authentic questions and people very curious about what does this mean and how would you solve this and that, and like having conversations with you afterwards and planting those seeds is amazing opportunity by standing up and running as a candidate. And I wasn't very good at communicating these ideas when I started, but after you have 100 conversations with people in your community asking you questions and debating you a little bit, you start to get more and more effective at it and a better speaker. But Alex, where can people follow you? Where can they find out what you're doing? What are your plans here? Are you going to keep the foot down? Are you going to keep running, or have you been?
Yeah, I know. I tell people every chance I get my name on a ballot. I force people to listen to my message. The local media, they're pretty biased towards, progressive leaning politics, but they'll still give me my 15 minutes of fame. They'll continue to give me coverage. And I've got the name Libertarian attached to me now. It's like I run in as a mayor and as a school board candidate, and it's still Alex Joehl, Libertarian, because that's who I am. So I'm not giving up that branding, regardless if the BC Libertarian Party changes their name or not. So no, I'm absolutely, if Trudeau gets what he wants and gets an early election, then I'll definitely be running with the Libertarian Party of Canada again here in Langley East, or sorry, that's Langley Aldergrove, the federal riding. And how people can follow me. I'm not overly active on Twitter, but Alex Joehl, at Alex Joehl. I've got Facebook. I have both my personal page, Alex Joehl, and then also I have Alex Joehl, political candidate for Langley, which is a little less active. Those are probably the best ways. I don't have my own podcast, unfortunately, where I don't have the opportunity to spread messages that way. But definitely, I would love for the libertarian community to just kind of band with each other and stop having so much infighting. I know that's what we're famous for. We've spent half the time spreading our message to the fertile ground out there as we do fighting amongst ourselves. We would be 5 election cycles further down the road. So I think that that's the message I have for people. It's why are we wasting our efforts talking about rebranding, wasting these resources when we're treading water at best? And we need to keep that train heading in the right direction, up the hill, spreading the message of liberty. And look for my name on ballots in Langley Aldergrove, and I'm going to be as the president of here in BC, as the president of the Delta Surrey Langley Constituency Association. I'm in charge of getting new members to the party, and I haven't necessarily done a good job of that, but that's definitely the next thing on my plate.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Alex, for your continued fight and your continued support of the party and what we're trying to do by creating more libertarians and changing culture. And look forward to seeing you in the next election. Thanks for joining us on the Liberty Experts.
Thanks for having me, Tim.